Good morning, class. I guess we can start, yeah? Is that all right? Rock and roll! Rock and roll! Does it work better if I turn one of these off? Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Good. I guess I should introduce myself. First, though, I want to say thank you all for inviting me to talk to you again. I really appreciate that. I'm not courteous of you. My name is Mike Arnzen. I'm a full-time faculty member here at Seton Hill. I teach and write and live horror fiction. But I can promise you that the topic today, while partially inspired by my genre and will be pertinent to anybody that writes horror fiction, should be applicable to all genres. Can you hear me in the back? Am I being loud enough? Is that a thumb up? Good. All right, shall we begin? All right, I have a little precursor. This is not going to be a hardcore, hands-on, exercise-driven, 1-hour session. It's Sunday. But what I'd like you to consider doing, if you're feeling scholarly this morning, is to take notes, and maybe in the margin of your notes, write about yourself, because my hope is that you will reflect on how these topics relate to what you do as a writer, and to your genre, and to your personality. Okay? All right, good. And I do have an exercise we could do, but I have a strong suspicion we'll run out of time. In fact, I doubt I'll get past slide 3, knowing you guys. Because I invite comments and questions along the way. I love chaos, which is related to the topic today, risk and transgression in writing fiction. I'm calling it wet cement, and you'll find out why in a second. But you know what wet cement is, right? They put signs up, so you won't write your name or the premise of your novel or whatever your website in the concrete. But when we write, we are creating concrete. Once it's published, it's pretty much in concrete, isn't it? Feels like it anyway. You could always do the revised edition, the unexpurgated version of the standard, whatever, if you're lucky. But once it's in print, it's kind of fixed. And that's the writing process. It's all wet until it's in print. Most people would think that's a good thing. It's a very fluid process. But we all know that we want to get it right every step of the way. So it can feel like cement. It can feel like it's too hard to really work through. It doesn't feel pliable in between our fingers and all that. But instead it feels like something we can't quite get a grip on. And they call it writer's block for a reason. There's no such thing. It's not a block until it's in print. As long as it's in your head, unfinished, it's wet. So be optimistic about this stuff. Let's see. I want to let you know that I was inspired to do this based on my latest nonfiction book. This is an e-book called Instigation, Creative Prompts on the Dark Side. And they're all, I wanted to do this book to put together a lot of my creative writing exercises and things. But I've always had this nagging suspicion, particularly with popular fiction writers, but with a lot of the creative writers I work with in the classroom, that they're not going far enough. They're not trying hard enough to be creative. Instead, they want to play it safe. Right? Because the safer you play it, the more likely you'll get published, I think, is the tacit belief, right? You want to know what the editor expects. So if you can meet those expectations, you have a strong likelihood, probability of getting published. Yet, you may have heard it if you went to the agent panel the other day. Editors, agents, they always say they want to be surprised. They want to see something fresh. They want to see something new. They see the same damn thing over and over again. 80% of it is just crap. The other 20% is all familiar. Good, but too familiar. And that 1% or whatever at the very cream of the crop, those are the ones that are very good, probably don't need a lot of editing, but also surprising and unfamiliar. So, I kind of make it my quest as an educator to push people into the unfamiliar territory. And this book, I think, is a way to push yourself into doing that, thus the devil's pitchfork with a pencil tip. All right, enough about me. What is risk? I don't know how you would personally define risk, but I used an app called WordFlex, which makes these cool expanded definitions for all the synonyms that are out there for the word risk, and some definitions there like a situation involving exposure to danger, right? The possibility of financial loss. Business people use this word risk. Bankers use the word risk. The possibility that something unpleasant might happen. Yeah. You probably can't see this in the back row. Here are some of the synonyms for it. Chance, probability, likelihood, danger, peril, threat, menace, fear, prospect. And the word possibility is in bold and underlined. Possibility. Possibility. I think this word has a lot to do with fiction and the creative process. Possibility. You know anybody who says, oh, I can't write, I'm just not creative? You know people like that? Maybe it's not writing, maybe it's art. Oh, I can't paint, I'm not an artist. All these folks probably could be artists, writers, painters, right? Really what they're saying isn't that I'm not inherently talented. They're saying I'm afraid to try. An optimist would respond, well, where will we start? Right? Fear is behind so much of what we do. We need to get over that. I have dual purposes here today. One is to get you to reflect on your own fears. The second one is to think about how you employ fear and possibility, risk, and transgression in your own fiction. So what we're talking about today could apply to you, could apply to one of your characters. It's always good to have a character who's afraid of something, but wants it very badly. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Any comments so far? May?
As a painter, I hear a lot, oh, I can't draw a straight line. That's the point. You're not a mechanical, whatever, engineer. You're supposed to be, if you want to really do it, you can do it.
You're right. An artist is somebody who can't be a mechanical engineer. It's either correct or it's art. But I like that attitude, actually. Because, nothing is inherently wrong. Nothing is inherently wrong. Wrong is a societal judgment, right? Any other comments so far? Did you take any risks last night? All right. Here are some more definitions that I was thinking of. Sorry, I went a little low here on the slide. When I think of risk, I think of a gamble. I just wrote a book about gambling. Play Dead came out in paperback recently. A chance or opportunity with an uncertain outcome. That's the dictionary kind of definition, right? A chance or opportunity with an uncertain outcome. Think of the phrase like risky behavior. That sounds damning, like you shouldn't do that. Right? Risky business. Tom Cruise shouldn't have done that. Right? But a risk is really a chance, usually a potential for gain, right? That could result in loss or catastrophe. So it's a dangerous option. Dangerous option. All right. High-stakes strategy is what someone in business might say. High-stakes strategy. Are you hearing or thinking of ways that this applies to fiction? I hope so. High stakes. Has anyone ever told you your manuscript doesn't have, the stakes aren't high enough, or what's at stake? A lot of people have, they struggle with that. They're like, what does that really mean? Or why isn't this high stakes enough? And that's usually related to what? The conflict, right? Conflict is where the stakes play out. Some of you might have been at, I think it was Donald Moss's, one of his presentations over the years for the Writing Popular Fiction program. And if you were there, you probably remember he just asks questions while people write. And one of them was like, what's the conflict? Describe it. And you write it out, and then he says, and what else could go wrong? And then you write for 10 minutes. And then he takes a drink, goes, has a cigarette, comes back and says, and what else could be wrong? And then he leaves again, comes back in the room and says, what could make that worse? And over and over and over again. Now, in theory, he's making a living by telling you that it can always be worse. It could always be more complex, more complicated, but also that the stakes could be higher. Not just that there could be, facets to the conflict, but that things can get worse. The outcome could be not just more uncertain, but could be more catastrophic. So think about your own work. Are there any risks that you as a writer are afraid to take because you fear catastrophe? Like, oh no, if I change genres right now, I'd ruin my career. It'd be too threatening to my identity if I suddenly wrote humor or erotica or whatever, but you really want to do it. There's some kind of desire there to do it. Or your main characters, obviously, in your current project. The guy just might want to get the girl, that old cliche or whatever, or vice versa. But, or none of the above, of course. But could that union threaten the stability of the world or the universe? Could happen, depending on your genre, your plot premise. So that question, what else could go wrong? How could it be worse? Those are good questions to always ask yourself. Why? Because the reader wants it to be that way. When we read, it's to escape, but we don't always want to go to a happy, cozy place when we escape. It takes that threat, that potential for catastrophe to kind of break us out of reality and pay attention. Like, uh-oh, problem. How is he going to get out of it? Right? And one of the ways you earn that from the reader is by having a high-stakes premise. Any comments or questions? I know this is relatively obvious for masters of the fine arts. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. No? Nothing? All right. I did some research and some thinking and came up with this table for those of you who might be interested at this point. Because another problem we often have, in my view, is that we're too one-dimensional about our plots, premises, and thinking about characters and conflict. Like, we think of it in a high-concept way, quick, one sentence or 15 words or less kind of conflict that we can describe quickly. But you can make your risk, your conflicts more three-dimensional, I think, if you just brainstorm about the different facets, not to that character necessarily, but to risk itself in relation to your plot premise. And so I thought I'd lay these out there for you and pretend to be academic. Risks to what or to whom? That's just the question that you could answer for yourself. But when I thought about it, I broke it down into these ways. There's physical risk, the potential for harm. Someone could lose a body part, someone could die. Obvious ones, right? Particularly in horror and genres of that nature. Or supernature. Physical, that's an easy one. In fact, if you write horror, I would encourage you not just to think about death all the time, because that's sort of a shortcut that we take in our genre. It's too easy. Yeah, people might die and the writer might have a great gore scene. Woo! But there could be more at stake than just death. There's more to life than death. That sounds pretty profound, yeah. Tweet that. All right. There's also emotional threats, risk. For a character to try to connect to another person that, might have harmed them in the past or something. Things like that. Intellectual risk. What's that? Can anyone define that? What's an intellectual risk?
Risk of failure.
Yeah. Risk of looking stupid.
That's a genetic risk. Thank you for laughing. Yes?
To have your worldview challenged or altered in like a fundamental way.
Yeah, I like that. It risks changing your whole paradigm for approaching the world, your worldview. Yeah. Now, you're right, like the risk of, what was it, looking bad? Is that what somebody said? That can be an emotional one too, like I'd be embarrassed if, you know what I'm saying? So, emotions are strange because we have words for them, but there are feelings that cannot be put into words. That's why we have so much emotion in fiction, because it dramatizes the emotion so that we can all feel it, right? And but you're right, that is a risk, either for characters, for writers, and for readers too. Like, they don't want to read that book in public, so they buy a Kindle. And I think I'm joking, but I'm being serious because, this is why 50 Shades of Grey was a bestseller and continues to be popular. I haven't read it yet, but I feel I could talk about it. Publishers talk about this book and that it became big because people could read that in private. When ebooks hit the market, it became popular, it became mainstream, and that happened together. And so that book is just a symptom of the media, not a good book. Now, if you like that book, that's cool, all right? Whatever floats your boat. But intellectual risk, yeah. Capital risk. I keep referring to the business language and lingo. You might think that might be irrelevant. How much did you pay for your master's degree? All right? Was it in the back of your mind, I might be wasting my money? Maybe if you were in my class first, you could do it. Yes, thank you. But we make investments over our whole lifetime in our writing career. But also with characters, all right? I'm trying to talk about both at the same time. It's hard to do. But characters, too. Sometimes we have a blind side to that they have to work for a living. Their job could be something that's that's causing them conflict. You can't just say, have your character run off and rescue the world without at least maybe leaving a voicemail to their boss or something. And then that could be a potentially interesting scene, So just brainstorming in these categories can be helpful. All right, are you with me on this? I'm going over a chart, so I feel like I'm really risking boring you to tears. Now those are, to what? To whom? This might be more interesting to you because of characters, and most of our conflicts are character-driven in popular fiction. We have protagonists, so almost universally the conflict is personal, right? What could happen to them? They might die, they might have a breakup, right? So that one's pretty obvious, because we're all selfish people and we spend our whole lives preoccupied with what could happen to me, oh my! And we spend our whole lives in that narcissistic way, so we can identify when protagonists do that in the fiction that we read. But there are also many layers to that, because we are in relationships with other people, so there's interpersonal risk. That's where when something happens, or something might happen, it could threaten the relationship between those two people. Right? So we see that in a lot of romance fiction, obviously, but it's always potentially there in any story. Socio-cultural. I tried to affect it. voice there. Got very academic, but well, I thought you were done. You're never done. Sociocultural is just simply the impact on the world outside of the characters. The collective group, it could just be like, you know, this is a collective group. There's a social element to what's happening in this room right now. So, a country, right? And then finally, global, universal. I'm not going to say this is just for science fiction writers, so you might be thinking that right away, but what's the impact of your plot on the world, or the risks that are playing out in the plot? How does it relate to the world? So you can always look at these 50 shades of risk. Okay? We already established that risk is central to well-plotted fiction and conflict. This is a formula for drama, which is sort of the emotional intensity of a story. I yanked this right out of a book by Janet Burroway called Writing Fiction. It's a nice formula for storytelling. Drama equals danger plus desire. So risk is not just about the danger, but the desire, right? If you're an investor, you want to buy stocks, but it might be risky, your desire is to make $1 million. Right? What sort of desire is behind a character's risk? Right? Why do they want something? What's in it for them? So to me, risk is really about these two things, danger and desire. And this is where the transgression part comes up. We'll talk about that further in a second. Do you like this equation? Is that too simple?
Another way would be to say that obstacle plus goal is what makes you go.
Obstacle plus goal?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's wanting something and something getting you that.
Yeah. Right. Obstacle plus goal, sure. That makes it sound a little too mechanistic for me. It robs the human need, the psychology out of
There's
it.
robots and science.
There's robots that they have artificial intelligence. Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. You know,
There wasn't enough drama in your equation. It's too early.
no, I liked it. It was good. That's perfectly fine. That's how I think of plotting. You know, I often just throw up obstacles in front of my characters when I feel like, oh no, I'm almost at the end. Better chop off a leg. But I want that leg to work. I desire this leg. Leg man. What was that? Anyway, let me show you how I see this shape, narrative shape of risk and desire playing out in fiction. This is from a comic strip which I just adore, and I broke it down pane by pane to walk through it with you. Because to me, this is the shape of drama, particularly relevant to horror. In the first pane, we have a guy mortaring up cement in a sidewalk, wet cement. There's signs that say "keep off," and you see that guy peeking around the corner. Imagine that that's your protagonist in this story, or you, seeing something you want, right? But it says way down here, bottom, back row, you can't see that, inhibited desire. If you can get this early into a story, you're really going to get your reader interested. Where a character wants something, but it's inhibited. They have an obstacle to their goal. And here, obviously, there's a guy there, he works, you know, he's making it, and the signs say keep off. Maybe inhibited is the wrong word. Frustrated. All this stuff has sexual content. In the next pane, the guy walks away. It says on the bottom, opportunity. The guy who is mortaring the cement is leaving, and the kid smiles. Ooh, he sees an opportunity to play in the cement, right? Again, think structurally about a plot. You got to dramatize the opportunity there. Mommy's gone. I can go up to that secret room. Yay, he takes action. I'm going to do it. Now that is the moment that he took the risk. He saw, in the comic strip, it's depicted that he wanted to do that, but it was blocked. The block is removed. He has an opportunity. He could get in trouble, so he takes the lead. Right? He can ruin it. He doesn't want to just write in it. He can destroy it. He's diving up, you see? He wants to make his footprint or something. Make a splash. Oh no, he might get concrete on his sneakers. I guess there's some kind of... Cost. But usually with just a kid, he could get in trouble because he's breaking the rules. Breaking the rules. It needs to be there in your fiction. After that comes consequence. Good fiction sets the reader up so that all of that is a distraction. And that there's really something else that could go wrong. That's something worse. Something worse. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be this kind of almost science fictional thing where it's a pool of acid, as I would like to imagine, or whatever. An entrance to a portal of the unknown, Could be anything, but it was not expected, even though it was right there in front of you the whole time. In fact, things seem less expected when there are more boundaries there, right? It just kind of looked normal, familiar, all these signs and rules. But then the person who was responsible for, for that place is gone. So there's no repercussions if he tries. I mean, the result is that there are repercussions. Yeah?
That's the twist.
That's the twist in mystery. There you go. Well, it's not over yet. The guy comes back and orders him in.
So now he's locked in there.
Now, this is the final pane of the cartoon by Peter Cooper. And I wrote on the bottom, restoration or not. So, at the end of fiction, in the closure of a story, you have really two choices when you do things like this. One is to have the character get away with it. The other is to have what he wasn't supposed to do be reaffirmed. Like, you weren't supposed to do that. I warned you. Fiction is a box. It's a Pandora's box that opens up all these possibilities for things to go wrong. But usually at the end, they have to live happily ever after anyway. Even in the worst horror fiction, the monster is usually killed, society gets back to, order, things are restored. That's what's called a conservative way of ending a story. There's also a very radical way of ending a story, where nothing will ever be the same ever again. The world has been radically altered forever. That's usually a dystopian ending. In horror fiction, it's like the world is destroyed. Are you guys following me?
Yeah.
Kind of just going off here. All right. Now, how does this pertain to your writing? I'm not sure. But I hope you're thinking about it.
It struck me when I was in second grade, we had a nun who told these stories about Frank and Tom.
A nun who told you have to tell everybody.
Tom was the good Catholic, Frank was the bad Catholic. It followed this pattern exactly.
Oh.
One of them did something bad, it ended up in the cement, or drowning, or electrocuted, or something. And he went to hell because he was the bad Catholic.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now, maybe this guy, he has those glasses on, so I don't know. Maybe he didn't even see the kid. You know what I'm saying?
See, I'm back on what motivated the kid.
It's all about the kid.
Make a mess.
Yeah.
What was that motivation? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
He doesn't know. I would take it as he doesn't know what's already happened.
Yeah, like he's blind to it.
Yeah.
Just doing his job.
No,
Maybe.
he has to know something because he came back and finished it.
If I were a good teacher, I'd say, all right, class, I got a piece of paper. Rewrite the ending, come up with an alternative explanation. It could be a story prompt for you. I don't know. Think about the structure. That's all I want you to do. Think about that structure and how your characters might be engaged in these kind of things. And it does not have to be science fiction, fantasy, or horror. There could be a romantic allegory to this. There could be some other allegory to this. Right? Just the structure is what we're talking about. I think Milt had his hand up. I respect the hand.
I was going to say, Mary Ann.
Milt.
I got one, it's kind of a Freudian thing that you already dressed the kid in a prisoner's outfit, the stripes.
Very good observation.
That's good.
And my mother wore stripes when she Marianne.
He's really like a spider character, and he's collecting these people and letting them sort of rot.
Maybe. Maybe. We never see what's on the other side.
Yeah, we never see what's on the side of it.
That, you know, that's great for the speculative genres. Leave a little mystery at the end there, a portal or something. I just like to, you know, believe that he's drowned in cement. Let's move on to Transgression. Let's see. No, I can't even read that in the front row, really. Transgression, I guess it's in that. Simply it's sin. Right? This is like the barrier to taking risk emotionally. We worry about stepping into the territory where we shouldn't go because it's morally wrong. It's transgressive. So some of the words up here are like wrongdoing, crime, offense, misbehavior, mischief, peccadillo, vice. I consider myself a writer of vice, not art. Don't tell anybody says that. It's true. I'm really interested in vice because vice is a crime that doesn't hurt anybody except the person that does it, really. And yet we have laws about that enforce it. So I find that very interesting. The society tries to police our liberty in that. Now, yeah, there are social ramifications, and if you're a cop or a judge or a lawyer, you could probably argue what they are. But the truth of the matter is, the more we put up those boundaries about behavior, the more people want to jump into the cement. That's why we read fiction. It's a guilty pleasure. It's transgressive to read, to escape from reality. If it wasn't, there would be more popular fiction novels in 4th grade reading. All the way up. Your whole schooling would have novels instead of textbooks. Right? Reading is something you do when you're not working. Reading is something you do when you're on vacation. Reading is something you do when you go to bed. It's like what you do on the margins of everyday life. And that's why we do it. We want to escape from everyday life. Right? So I find transgression to always be present in fiction. Let me tell you a little story. When I was a kid, I bet most of you went through a similar experience. I used to do those summer reading things in the library when I was very young. In other words, my parents considered the library a babysitter and dropped me off there for the day. Well, I don't know what they did. Probably something transgressive. It was the 60s. But I read like crazy. I read 1 million books. Like I wanted to read the most, and they put stars on the wall or something for every book that people read. It became a competition. I don't know if I won or not, but I read a lot. That's right. That was my introduction to YA. A lot from that experience. But there came a point where I realized I was always put in the children's section of the library. This library had a whole big children's section. And everything we did for that was in the children's section. I was wondering, what's everybody doing on the other side of the library? So point came where I snuck into the adult section. And what did I find? I didn't find, dirty books or anything. I discovered Planet of the Apes and Ray Bradbury and all these other books. And I was done with YA at that point because I realized there were all these worlds that were kind of being censored from my life. Like there were all these cool things. There's a theorist named Neil Postman in a book called The Disappearance of Childhood who says, if you've read this, it's a cool book. It's kind of a little out there. But his argument is that what makes somebody an adult is their literacy level. You're considered an adult if you can read. Why? Because you suddenly have access to adult secrets. Access to the whole history of adult secrets. And then in this book he goes on and on about how television has changed literacy, and a 3-year-old could watch, a porn now, and what does that do for the adulthood? What happens to adulthood at that point? It used to be a safe place. It used to be the adult section in the library. He argues that that's going away now. Anyway, this is part of my argument that reading is transgressive. Reading is in the adult section of the library. Even if you write YA, you're helping that child escape from doing homework and chores. There's something transgressive about this. Are you with me?
Yes.
Do you have similar experiences? Now, there are other forms of transgression that are out there, of course, and these are the interesting things that publishers are looking for, because they want their books to kind of tweak that sense of dark, not to the dark side, but doing something a little risky, a little risque. Even if it's just, oh my, they kissed. Every genre has its own degree of transgression. And the subgenres, if you look at them closely, you could see a whole dynamic range of very tiny transgressions to major transgression. Usually the word erotic is in front of it. Right? But like in horror, there's like the extreme horror, which is totally focused on the gore. Think of your own genre. All right. I'm keeping it forward here. But I did want to say one other thing about transgression and genre, is that this is why, in my opinion, hybrid genres are really popular. They're like dominant elements or subgenres, I guess. They've become their own genres now, all the hybrid genres, like paranormal romance. There was a time that, like paranormal romance was called horror or romance. Now, paranormal romance. How many of you write that? Transgressor. It's like robot. Transgressor. Obstacle. All of our genres right now have disputes and politics based in this hybridization. I don't know if you know it or not. If you write paranormal romance, go to a horror convention, you'll be on the margins. If you write paranormal romance, you go to a romance, you write horror, you go to a romance convention, you'll be on the margins. Because it's like this politic involved. And publishers are trying to carve out spaces where they can get dominance in the marketplace with these things. But they're really just experimenting. But why is it interesting to me? Because they are literary experiments in transgression. How far can you go over the boundary between one and another? Transgression is about crossing boundaries. And so hybrid genres are fascinating to me. Where do we stop merging them? How do they define themselves? When do they become an other to something else, where another genre tries to kind of blend with it? It's really interesting to me. And there's an opportunity for all writers to kind of transgress the boundaries of their own genres. In fact, you're probably aware of this. We've talked about it in the program if you're a former student, that genre fiction is all about convention and invention. You have to bring something new into your genre. And when you do that, you're threatening the genre. You are, right? You could change the genre. You could radically alter it by doing something unheard of. Not just because it's cool or you have a unique, distinct voice, but because you changed the whole rules. You made everybody rethink the conventions of what is possible for that genre. That's a transgressive act too. So I'd ask you to just reflect privately, maybe later, on the plane ride home. What are you doing to push the envelope there? Change the rules, push the boundary lines. And I would encourage you to take more risks creatively. Not just to get an editor's attention, but maybe to be someone who writes the rules for your own take on the genre. Create your own subgenre. Be the person who invented that. Go for it. What do you got to lose, really? Your reputation? Your income? Is there something risky about it? I say go there. And some of these things are managers to me, so you may have heard me say them before. People always say to me, Arnzen, you had to go there. So at a diner once, we were looking at a menu with my friends all sitting around the table. Somebody goes, ew, look at that picture of that food. And I said, yeah, it looks like a dirty baby diaper. And all went, you had to go there. And that's me. That's you too, Jerry. Just kidding. And you, Prescott, all you horror writers. You have to go there. I think, though, every genre gives you license to do that. I'm known as the horror writer guy in my group of friends. So I can get away with saying stuff like that. I'm not considered aberrant because of that. I'm like, oh, you got a perverse mind. They're just like, oh, you have a perverse mind. You get away with that stuff because you're given a license as a creative writer. Your genre identity gives you license to ill or whatever. You can do whatever you want related to your genre, right? Think of how you do that. Not just at the dining room table, but in your writing. Are you really flaunting your creative license? Or are you playing it too safe? Another thing I steal from Janet Burroway is this idea. It says, recognize your evasive maneuvers. You can do this in a writing workshop. If you have a pattern where you never talk about the setting, chances are you're afraid to write about setting. Like you don't trust your own observational skills, or you're not good at giving detail. So you don't write about it. You evade it. You don't even put it in there. You unconsciously avoided writing about it because you're afraid to. Any pattern that you get called on all the time in workshop, that they're like, that's a problem in the story, you hear it again and again and again, it might be that, an evasive maneuver in your writing process. Sometimes people choose genres based on this. Like, oh, I hate writing about that icky stuff. I'm going to write the antithesis of horror. Or, I can't write love scenes. They make me uncomfortable. I'm going to write science fiction. I write science fiction too, but so I'm not. Here's another one from Brian Eno. Honor thy error as a hidden intention. When you make mistakes in your first drafts, you might think, oh God, I'm so dumb. No, your unconscious mind might have been pushing you to try something new, but you edited it out. There's an article about that in my instigation book if you're interested in that. But sometimes we write things because we want to go there, but then we edited it out. Or something happened while we were writing, we stopped ourselves from going there. But it slipped out a little bit. Slipped out a little bit. And on the bottom it says, understand your risk tolerance. That's really just become aware of how much risk you're willing to take as a writer in your career or in your fiction writing process or anything like that. And the next final element of this is the writer's market. How do you take risk in the marketplace? I've covered everything here. It's great. Very generalizing. Tell me what you think this is going to be about. How do you take risks in the writer's market?
Isn't it more a question of how do you find literary partners to take the risk with you, i.e. agents, editor, publisher, because you're not an island unto yourself unless you ebook publish.
Interesting. Can you hear her in the back? She said, find partners who will, lighten the risk.
Or be willing to join you.
Or be willing to join you. Yeah. There is safety in numbers. Well, that's a solution to this, but I'm encouraging you to take more risk. Screw your agent. Publishers and agents want you to take risks.
Not always. Not always.
Aha! I love all this. I love it. You're already going like, how can I protect myself and be safe? Let me get an agent partnering up with me. Maybe. Let the agent take the risk for you. The more risk you take, the less money a publisher's going to put into it, unless they really love it. Well, let me talk about it in terms of investment style. The word market is part of the writing market. And not enough of us think in terms of business. And I'm no business teacher, but investment style. Get a hold on how much risk you're willing to take in the marketplace. And by this I mean trying new things, submitting to places or people you never would have, normally thought to. I'll just give easy examples, like submitting to Playboy. Oh no, that might embarrass me if I had a story of Playboy. When I went to the bank and cashed the $5,000 check. You get what I'm saying now? And every one of us has a different kind of personal or emotional and sense of how much risk we're willing to take with the choices we make when we go into the writer's marketplace. But these are lifted straight out of business lingo. When people make investments in the stock market, you can make conservative portfolios of stocks. Have you heard of this before? Where you just buy the blue chip ones that have been around forever. You don't put any money into the IPOs, the new businesses, the startups. So you just go with the name publications, the recognizable publishers, right? You do what your agent tells you to do, things like that. That's conservative. You're risk averse. Most people, I think, would try to say that they're balanced and moderate, and they'll take a little risk. They'll try something new once in a while. They write novels all the time, but they might write a short story once a year. Don't make much money from it. It risks my time, right? Risk isn't just about the pay and things like that. Some people are very aggressive. They're like, I'm going all in. I'm going to write everything for every market. And then see what happens. Let the world decide who I am. That's a good way to start. Because often we're wrong about who we are. And we pull our feet out from under us. And the final way is contrarian. And I actually recommend this. Particularly with trends in the market. If you see everybody's writing a zombie novel, don't write a zombie novel. Write the opposite of a zombie novel. What's the opposite of a zombie novel?
Babies.
Babies?
Living. Birth versus walking.
There you go. All right. Birth. Sure. I don't know. Be creative.
I think there's a risk to contrarian because I find that I am trend averse, but that leaves me not writing. It's like, okay, I have this idea. Okay, that's been done 800 times already, and then I just sit there. Right. So I think there's a certain amount of risk in embracing that.
Oh yeah, it's risky.
A risk of like freezing yourself up and then not producing anything.
Sure, you're right.
I like contrarian.
You like it?
I like it. It appeals to me.
That doesn't sound very contrarian.
I don't like trends. When you said about zombies, said I don't want another zombie movie. I don't want The Walking Dead ever on TV. I'm going to throw it out. I don't want any of that. So I want something different.
Well, there's a way to hop on the trend by doing the exact opposite.
The exact opposite, yeah.
You can write zombies who are lovers, not brain eaters.
I also find that I wrote, for my first thesis, I wrote a vampire novel that wasn't actually vampires, right?
Yeah.
And then,
you mean leechers? I remember that.
Yeah, leechers, that's what you were calling it.
That was my title.
And then, I wrote a zombie story that wasn't actually zombies. So, I guess it can be helpful, but I do think one of the risks is freezing up.
To me, it's a creative strategy. I get invited to anthologies all the time, and I get the guidelines, and they're always about theme, right? Race car horror. So, I sit down, I just spend 10 minutes making a list. Here are all the stories I would expect to see in that anthology. And then I avoid all that. That is a contrarian approach. It's not saying, oh, wait a minute, NASCAR's big. I'm going to write a NASCAR horror story. That's the first impulse, and that's usually what most people will do. So, being contrarian isn't necessarily just doing the opposite. It's sometimes just going against the grain a little bit. Going against the grain. We can talk more about that, but I don't want to chew up all the time. We have no speaker come soon. Do I have anything else on here? No.
That's the ultimate question.
I have an exercise you can do on your own if you want to try this sometime. It's really just about creative risk. It's not about being the next bestseller or anything like that. But just practicing something risky in writing that might push you outside of your comfort zone. And the exercise would be to make a list of things that you know absolutely nothing about that are technical. Like mechanical engineering, piloting a plane, I don't know, anything, any occupation I think you do where there's highly technical skill involved, playing guitar. Then force yourself to just write a page from the viewpoint of somebody who does that for a living without consulting any dictionaries, Wikipedia, or anything. Just making stuff up. The problem with a lot of creative writers is that they don't make stuff up. They don't want their creative license. They're too afraid to do something new. They are so hung up about being perfect. They want to make sure that they meet an editor's or reader's expectations, but they don't try something new. So start a journal where it's just your risk journal. Start trying new things just to see if you can do it. Be creative. It's a risk to make anything. If you've had a child, you know that. The second you make a baby, you start to realize that it could die any second. And then it's your job, at least for 18 years, to try to make sure it keeps breathing. Whoopsie! I guess that's the way of saying all life is risk, and you gotta get there. You gotta get into the life. Any other questions, comments? No, you didn't learn anything. Let's start rolling your eyes. Rock and roll?
Rock and roll. Very good. Wonderful.
Yeah.